This episode of the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast is brought to you by Bluehost. Try the #1 recommended web hosting provider. With plans starting at just $3.95 a month, you'll get a free domain, free site builder, easy one-click WordPress installs, and 24/7 support. But what's just as impressive as what you get is what you don't get, as there's no contracts, no hidden fees, and no gimmicks. Go check them out at lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/Bluehost. You're listening to the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast, the weekly show sharing proven methods and systems in marketing, equipment, and customer service, educational and motivational, to help make your lawn care business an overwhelming success. Now here's your host, Julio Tomei. Welcome, Lawn Care Nation, to another episode of the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast. I'm your host, Julio Tomei, and this is episode number 107, entitled The Importance of Knowing Your Overhead. Well, hello, everybody, and thanks again for joining me this week on another episode of the Lawn Care Business Success Podcast. I really appreciate you guys tuning in each and every week, as always, and downloading those episodes, as well as the reviews for the podcast that have been coming in. All great and fantastic stuff. And like I say, I really do appreciate you guys taking that time to go on to iTunes and leaving a review. If you haven't already and you'd like to, you can head on over to lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/reviews. And there'll be a link there where you can head on over to iTunes and leave a review. I know it's and I've mentioned this before, that it's a bit of a pain, and I truly understand that, and that's why it means so much more to me when you guys actually do leave a review, because I do understand the inherent difficulties that is present for leaving reviews through iTunes. And I can only hope that someday that will change and that Apple will open it up and make it a lot easier for those, particularly who are not, maybe iPhone users and stuff, to be able to still be able to leave reviews. As well, in this episode, like I mentioned, I want to talk about the importance of knowing your overhead and why that is so important. When you're starting a small business and you're just starting out, and particularly if you're coming from another job, a part-time job, for me, the last job I was working at before I went full-time into lawn care, I was working for a contractor that was contracted out by the local government to provide vehicle emission testing. So we had a program here in the province of British Columbia, where I live, where vehicles had to have their emissions tested on a yearly basis for vehicles older than 1998, and every 2 years for vehicles 1998 and newer. And the vehicle had to pass this emissions test to be able to have insurance purchased again and be able to drive that vehicle on the road again for another year or another 2 years. So I worked for this company, and I think it was a company out of Arizona that was here in Canada, contracted out by the local government to run these emission tests. And so, like I say, I was a vehicle emission tester. So essentially, when people's insurance, it was time for their insurance to come up. they'd have to go to one of these testing stations, and there was a whole handful of them around, and they would have to line up and wait in line, and then they would get to me, and I would enter their vehicle's information and essentially check, do some visual checks on their vehicle as far as, making sure the catalytic converter was still present. I would do a gas cap pressure test to make sure the gas cap seals were still working and, containing any vapor that may be trying to escape through the filler hole. Essentially just doing an overall visual inspection before I would take the car then and put it on a dynamometer. There would be a computer-controlled test in front of me on a big screen, and I would get into the customer's car, and I would actually start driving the car on this dyno and going, up to 70, 80, and sometimes I think in the test 90 kilometers an hour. Standing still, basically. I'd have to sort of follow this test, speeding up and slowing down as the test asked me to, so that it could test the emissions coming out of the tailpipe. So that's what I did. And that job, before that job, I was working at a home improvement center, much like a Home Depot. And I did actually work at Home Depot at one point in my life. But at this particular point, I was working at another essentially big box type store that's only here in Canada, this particular one. And I think it's now been since been bought by Lowe's and is now that name brand or brand of box stores that I was working for have now all turned into Lowe's stores here in Canada. Before that, when I was working at those big box stores, it was pretty much minimum wage type of a job. So when I went to this vehicle emission testing job, it was quite the bump up, for me at least, in hourly pay. I was making double what I was making, at the home improvement store wages, which were, like I say, essentially minimum wage at the time. So I went to this, I got this emission testing job, and for me it was like, well, I've hit the jackpot. I'm now making, double what I was making before. This is fantastic. I've told this story before, or told you guys how, for me, I almost feel like, I'm not tested or proven that I have ADD. But for me, when I think about people, or when you hear about ADD, I sort of fit all that criteria. And when I look back at my history and previous jobs and school and things like that, all the signs are there that I'm completely attention deficit disorder, right? I cannot stand doing something for long periods of time, and also if I'm not interested in a particular subject, there's no you cannot keep my attention. I just want to get out of there and go on and do something. But if it's something that I enjoy, I think in last week's episode talking about SEO for websites and stuff, building websites and things like that was something that I enjoyed doing, and I enjoyed figuring it out and all that. And I would spend hours and hours and hours on the internet researching it and trying different things and doing things, getting things to work. And, if it's something that I like, I can spend hours doing it. But if I don't, that's where that sort of attention deficit kind of steps in. And it's like, if I have no interest, there's no way. It's like, pulling teeth at the dentist, basically. So coming from a job like that, where, I thought I had it made, it was like, ooh, I'm making this, double the cash and stuff. But realistically, when I think back to that job, I was making for a whole day's, wages was roughly about $120. And like I say, for me, that was like, hey, this is great at the time compared to what I was doing before that. And when I first, like I said, first started doing lawn care full time, my main goal was, hey, if I can make $120 a day, then I'm laughing, because, you know, I'm matching what I made at my old job. And, you know, that was the sort of, like I said, goal of doing lawn care. And I quickly found out that there's a lot more to it than that. And that just matching that $120 was not enough, because now there's overhead. And in the job sense of working for somebody else, there was an overhead. So I didn't have to worry about any of that. But with running your own business, you have to be aware of that. And one of the traps that I see, and I'm not sure, you know, where you're listing from, if this applies, if it's the same, you know, in the United States, in other places outside of Canada. The podcast does get downloaded from, I don't know the exact number, but the list is long of countries. So, you know, there's people listening from all over the world. So I'm not sure exactly how this part applies, but here in Canada, at least, when you start off as a small business, you always hear of businesses doing their quarterly reports and stuff like that. But if you're a small business and you're just starting out and you're a single operator, you have the choice of not doing quarterly. In fact, when you first start out, they just put you on yearly reporting. So what this means is you don't have to do month ends. You don't have to do any of that stuff until the end of the year. And being small enough, that can be, you know, a pretty easy task to tackle. So what happens, though, is that it's an easy way to lose track of what is going on financially. And this is where you can lose a lot of time in building your business, and lose a lot of time in achieving the goals that you set out for yourself, if you're not looking at those numbers, at that bottom line, and understanding where the money's coming from and where the money's going. And I say this because, you know, in the case of somebody small starting out, if you're only doing yearly reporting and you get complacent in not doing those month ends and seeing your expenses and seeing your income and all that, it can be very easy for a year to go by before you do anything, and then you find out the reality of the situation and the reality of the state of your business. Or, you know, it can be a rude awakening to figure out that you just spent the whole year scraping by, and you say you're in business, but that you could literally go pick up a job working at a fast food restaurant and have been better off in the long run over that period of that 1 year, income wise, because you don't know your costs. You're not keeping track of the true costs of your business and truly seeing if your business is actually a financially viable venture. Did the sales that you made, did the income that you collected week after week, you would see those checks coming in, or you'd be billing those credit cards, or, however it is that you collect payment, you can see that money coming in, but at the same time, there's always money going out. And are you essentially, what it comes down to is billing your clients enough to make your business viable? Because if it isn't viable, there's no sense in doing it. Now, that's not to say that you can't tweak things and make adjustments and, change your course a few degrees to get back on track to where you need to go. But doing your financials on a monthly basis and keeping track of them, keeping, strict track of them, just makes it all the easier to course correct quickly, so that you're not wasting a good part of a whole year before figuring that out. Or even on a quarterly basis, if you're having to report your income and taxes and all that stuff to the government on a quarterly basis, that's still, 3 months. And, you could save yourself, after 1 month, knowing that something's amiss, and save yourself 2 extra months and be able to course correct and get back on track. So I'm going to play the podcast announcements, and then we'll get back into it right after this. So stay tuned. Hey guys, if you have any questions or comments about the show, I'd love to hear from you. You can head on over to lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/contact. And while you're there, why not join my mailing list and get access to a free PDF document of a landscape maintenance contract you can feel free to copy and use in your own business. For you Instagram users out there, be sure to follow me at Lawn Care Business Success. And if you haven't checked out my videos yet, well, what are you waiting for? Be sure to subscribe to the Lawn Care Business Success YouTube channel. Now, I know you guys love listening to audio while you work as much as I do, so I've partnered up with Audible to offer you guys a free 30-day trial and 1 free audiobook of your choice. There's no long-term commitments, and you can cancel anytime. And get this, even if you cancel during the trial period, you get to keep your free audiobook. It's a great way to try the service and see if Audible is right for you. So why not give it a try? Head on over to lawncarebusinesssuccess.com/audible. Now back to the show. Okay, so like I talked about the break there, or before the break there, about, making sure you keep track of your financials so that you don't go off course for too long, and you can course correct and get back on track and know the true viability of your business before it's too late, before you figure out that you could have just had a regular job working at even a fast food restaurant or some other part-time job and have been better off than the blood, sweat, and tears that you put in, and the long hours, and, things aren't working out. So how do we do this? How do we figure out, what we should be charging? Well, first of all, you got to figure out what you've been spending, or what it takes, rather, financially to run your business. So what you want to do is you want to essentially take a piece of paper, and on one half of the paper, you want to put your expenses for your business. So your truck payment, if there is one, your truck's maintenance costs, and you want to predict this for the year. So if you're doing, depending on vehicles these days, they have different maintenance schedules. Some of them require oil changes, every 4 months or 5 months. Some of them are 6 months. Some of them are every 3 months. So depending on your vehicle, you want to figure out what the maintenance schedule is for that and factor in, if you need an oil change every 4 months or every 3 months, how many oil changes per year, what that typically costs. How many years, you get out of a set of tires, and divide that into a year and add that into cost for your maintenance. The fuel you want to, predict. And if you've been in business a little bit now, like a year or two, this is a lot easier because you should have your receipts that you can fall back on and check and look at, how much fuel you spent that year. And if you had, say, 10 customers last year and you spent this amount on gas, and this year you have 15 customers, you should be able to mathematically figure out that if you spent this much for 10, you divide that in half, and that would have been for 5. So now you take the amount for 10 and you add the amount for the 5, and now that'll give you your predicted fuel for 15, and so on and so forth. You also want to figure out your tool maintenance. Do you have all the tools required that you need if you're just starting into the business? And if you are in the business, what's the maintenance involved in those tools? How much for the oil changes on those? Are you going to do the oil changes yourself? Are you going to do the maintenance yourself? Or are you going to take the equipment to the dealer to have maintenance done? If so, what does that cost? How often should it be done? You want to predict your fuel costs for your equipment. And again, this is one where if you've been in business for a few years, then you should have your receipts to fall back on, and you should be able to figure out and adjust those going forward for more clients. Your consumables for your equipment. And by this, I mean things like trimmer line, your 2-stroke oil, your lawnmower blades or edger blades, what things in your business are fixed consumables that you need for equipment. I'm not talking about grass seed or fertilizer or things like that, because those are based on the jobs that you get. What I'm talking about is mainly, the whole podcast is centered around lawn care businesses. So I'm assuming that you are running a lawn care business. So lawn care is your predominant or number one method of income in your business. I talk about, keeping your eye out for other work and all that stuff, and that's fantastic. But it's all based around the lawn care, and lawn care being predominant, and doing that extra work during other times of the season where, you may have drought or in the winter and all that sort of stuff. So the consumables for mowing lawns, what does that cost? Do you have to dispose of your grass? Are you mulching the grass? Are you just side discharging it? Or are you having to collect it? And if so, are you able to dispose of it locally, on site, or do you have to actually put it in a trailer or in the back of your truck and take it to a dump? And if you are taking it to a dump, what does that cost? How often will you have to do that? You want to project that. And, you don't have to get these numbers exactly right, but you want to have an idea of what this is. And the thing is that you can always go back and course correct and constantly adjust. If you put down that, you think you're going to have to go to the dump 3 times a month, and you find out, that on average now, after a month or two, you're going 5 times a month. Well, now you adjust. You go back to that piece of paper, you put down the 5 times a month, and you recalculate, and you figure out where you stand, and you adjust from there. The other things you want to be aware of course, is your insurance costs. You'll have insurance costs for your vehicle and insurance costs for your business. Absolutely essential. I have been in business for 12 years in my lawn care business. In every single one of those 12 years, I have had insurance. I have put over $12,000 over those 12 years in insurance. On average, paying over $1,000. So I'm just being conservative in saying that I've paid at least $12,000 in 12 years for insurance. And I've only had to use the insurance one time. And that was for when the trailer was stolen. I've never, knock on wood, had to make an insurance claim on my liability insurance for hurting somebody or damaging property or anything like that in the 12 years. I have damaged property from time to time. Driving my walker mower through a cedar fence comes to mind. The first time I got on my walker. But I chose to pay out of pocket for that rather than go through the insurance because it was just a lot cheaper and not only cheaper but a lot faster because I could just run out and within a few hours have that fence fixed. Doing it myself, I had the tools more than capable of getting it all done. But in 12 years, the point is I've had insurance and haven't really ever had to use it other than the trailer getting stolen. The amount recovered from that trailer being stolen and all the tools on it did not equal the $12,000 that I've paid into it, but I still would not recommend somebody not having insurance because it just takes that one time. And like I say, I haven't hurt anybody. I haven't been trimming or anything like that and hit a rock or something and had it hit somebody in the eye. But if something like that, God forbid, were to happen, it would be a lot more than $12,000 that you'd be on the hook for. So absolutely critical to make sure you have insurance. So you want to calculate those insurance costs for that year. What's it going to cost you to have that business insurance, that liability insurance, your vehicle insurance? You probably have some sort of insurance on your trailer if you run a trailer. Your cell phone bill, your internet costs, all that sort of stuff. Anything and everything to do with your business, you want to break it down onto that piece of paper and add it all together. And you want to calculate all of those costs, estimated at first if you're just going into the business, but for the year. Then, once you've done that, and like I say, you can always go back and course correct and adjust things once you're going through the motions and months are passing by and you're seeing the true costs and what's adding up. But getting that idea so that you're not flying in the dark by the seat of your pants, as the saying goes. Once you get all of that calculated for the year, you want to then think about what your season consists of. So if you are predominantly doing lawn care, and this is all you're doing, and you're taking the winters off, and you have no plans for doing snow removal or anything like that, and if you are doing snow removal, then you want to factor in those costs as far as purchasing a plow and what those payments and maintenance and consumables on that would be. But you want to, if you're predominantly lawn care and say your season is 7 months or 8 months or whatever the case may be, you're going to take those costs, that were all totaled all together for the year. You're going to divide that by the 7 or 8 months of your season. Then you're going to divide that back down into, how many weeks and then how many hours in a day until you get an hourly cost of what your business costs you to operate. Plain and simple. The next thing that I want you to do is I want you to go on the other side of the paper. And now you are going to list off all of your other expenses, the stuff that you need to live, and the stuff that you need to provide for your family. So rent, mortgage payments, maybe transportation, bus costs, things like that for your family if they're requiring that. Food, utilities, you got to have heat, you got to have water. Maybe you have to pay property taxes. Maybe you have strata fees where you live and you have to pay for that. Then, of course, health insurance, especially, you may risk not having health insurance on your own, but if you have a family, you're having health insurance. So you want to make sure you have health insurance. And any other utilities or bills that you deem necessary, whether it's phone lines at home, a cable bill, internet, your Netflix, whatever else, your gym memberships, sports fees, dance fees for your children, all of that stuff. All the stuff that you are doing, if you're doing it right now in a part-time job, these are the things you're going to break down. What are you paying for now outside, not for running a business? So besides running a business, what would you be paying for? If a lot of that stuff is duplicate, like, for example, your vehicle insurance. So if you have insurance on your truck on the side of, running your business, what it costs for running your business. But if you didn't have a business, you'd also have that on your household side. Then just put it on either one or the other. So once you've done that, I want you to add up all those household fees, your home insurance, your rent, your mortgage, your projected food bills, utilities, health insurance, all that stuff. You're going to add it all together for that year. And then you're going to break it down like you did with the other. And you're going to break it down into the season that you'd be working if you're a lawn care. So if you're a 7-month season or 8-month season, you're going to break down that cost to that season. And then from there, you can break it down to by month for those 7 months. And then by the week and by the hour, if you want. You can break it down right down to that. Now, here's where the things get interesting. Because you want to then look at your business costs, what it costs you to run that business. And then you want to look at those household costs. And you're going to have to add those together. So now you have your costs for your business and your costs for your household. And if you look at if we step back one step and we look at your now income, and if you've been in business for a year or two, you look at what you've collected in income for that 1 year or the other year. Does the income you made cover, first of all, those costs associated with running your business? Or are you falling short? Do those costs now, if they do cover your business and running your business, so the money that you've earned, the money that you've billed out to your clients, does it, you've ensured that it covers your actual costs for running your business, for what it costs you in that first half of the sheet running your business? Is there enough left over to cover the costs for your household? That's where it gets interesting. Because if you have enough to run your business, you still need that money to be able to pay the bills, to give your family the life that you want to give them. And this is where you will beat yourself up if you can't. If your family is going without, that's where it's going to get hard. So here's where you can then look and say, okay, I'm billing out this much this year, and it's costing me this much to run my business. And on top of that, I need this much more to cover my other bills. Is the business viable enough to do that? And remember here, this is just basically breaking even. This is just getting you to a point where at the end of the month, all your bills are taken care of, and your family has a roof over its head, and it's got the food to eat, and it's got, maybe a few activities to do, but your bank account still sits at zero. And you really, once you start looking at these numbers, will you then start to realize what is required to make any of your future plans come true? Maybe it's, if you're renting, buying your own property. Maybe it's buying that boat you wanted. Maybe it's being able to go on vacations and adding that into the mix for your whole family. Every couple of years, every single year, whatever the case may be. And this is where you start to look at your business and analyze it and start to say, what's working, what isn't working, and what or where do I need to adjust my prices? Because you can go along and be satisfied, with that $120 a day, thinking, I'm matching my last job, and I was fine with that, and we all got by, but not knowing your true numbers, you're not realizing that you're not actually making $120 a day because of all the expenses that are involved there. So you want to break that down. And when you break that down, like I say, you'll be able to get down to right down to an hourly number of, this is what it costs my business, or costs me to run my business for an hour. Because my business only operates however many hours a day for however many months a year. And all of those expenses involved with my business have to be covered in that time. And on top of that, I've got all of my household expenses. And those all have to be paid for the year in that span of the 7-month mowing season. For however many hours a day, however many days a week that you work, and however many months in that season. And you add those two together, and now you have a true hourly operating cost. This is the bare minimum per hour that's required for you to survive. And if this will cover all of your expenses, but leave nothing else. Nothing left for savings or investments or fun or anything like that. That's just to pay your bills and get by. And it makes it a lot easier to understand then the costs of your jobs. Because now if you start adding employees and you're paying them per hour, and you go and bid a job, say you're doing all these calculations, and you find out that your costs that you need is say $17 or $18 or $20 per hour to run and pay your combined costs of household and business. And, you get to a job and it's a simple mowing job, and, you bid the customer, you go, okay, it's, I know in my head that it cost me $20. This is, right away out of my pocket. I'm looking at this job. It's going to take me an hour. Each and every week, it's a corner lot or whatever the case may be. And it's going to take me an hour. So, I'm going to bid them $30 or $40 because you think that sounds good. $40 an hour or whatever. But you got to remember, you're not making $40 an hour. You're making, if you're billing them $40, you're only making $20 because it's costing you $20 to even show up. And the other $20 now is what you think your time is worth. So it's great to say, hey, I made $40 in this job. Took me an hour, made $40 an hour. Fantastic. My last job was only making $7 an hour. Now that may be true. You may be making, more than you did on your last job. But it's not as much as you think. As I gave in that example, your $40 is actually only $20. And you have to be worried because you'll get into situations, especially when you're starting out, when the customers will play tricks with you. They will try to get, your prices lower. Especially if you're just starting out. They can sense your vulnerabilities and your unsureness when you're quoting. And it almost seems at times that your desperation, if you're in a tough mind, kind of comes through. And there will be people that will try to take advantage of that. So you just have to be mindful of it and know that, if that person comes back at you and says, well, the last guy did it for 25. I'm not paying you $40. Then you have a choice to make, because now it's black or white. There's no dancing around it. It cost you $20. Showing up each and every week to do that job is going to cost you $20 out of your pocket. So is working there for 1 hour worth $5? Is that what your time is worth? And that's where I say you can go a whole long time if you're billing like that and figure out, holy smokes, this whole year's gone by and I've essentially made $5 an hour after my costs. And I could have been working at McDonald's for $8 and been better off. So you really have to know those numbers. And like I say, constantly course correcting and adjusting if things change. If you get an increase, sometimes you'll, from time to time, get an increase sent to you in the mail. Some company for some service you use. Maybe it's, probably not likely on a cell phone bill because of contracts and stuff. But if you're, well, not necessarily. Maybe if you're doing a renewal of your cell phone contract, the price might go up the next year. You want to go back and adjust those numbers. When it gets hard, or with things that are hard, obviously, is things like fuel, that you have no control over the prices of it, where it can seemingly jump from obviously one day to the next. So with those, you want to just get as close to as the price as you can and just basically base it on last year. You can maybe add a percentage or two in the mix there for fluctuation, but you guys get the point there. And it's just, like I say in the title, the importance of knowing the overhead, of knowing exactly what it costs you, because then you can truly, you get, this question all the time from people is, what do you charge per hour? Or how do you know how to charge, what to charge per hour? Well, this is how you do it. You go through what I just explained and you figure out your true overhead costs. And once you figure out those overhead costs and you figure out, what it takes for all your bills to get paid, only then will you be able to truly start to comprehend and master quoting properly. Because then you can show up to a job and as time goes on and you get more and more experienced, in the beginning, it'll be a lot more difficult, and there's always going to be trial and error, and you can't beat yourself up for that. It's always a learning experience. So if you go to a job and you lose money on it because it takes a lot longer than you thought, you just bite the bullet and you move on, and the next time now what it really takes, how long it really takes. So you may be losing money, but in those senses, when you're first starting out, it's inevitable, and it's like paying for an education at university, right? You pay your dues and then you get to learn. And in business, there's always that education. And we all do it. But you learn and you try to remember those experiences, and you draw from them, from those experiences in the past. And now when you're, if you've never mowed lawns before as a business, but you've done them, done your own lawn, that's what you're going to draw on. You're going to draw on, okay, well, it takes me this long to mow my lawn. But you'll find that over time you get better at it and you get faster at it. You get more efficient at it. You learn more techniques. You get tools that can do it better, faster, and more efficient. And you adjust. And as time goes by, you'll be able to look at a job and be able to quote that job knowing now how long it's going to take you. Without even actually doing it. You'll just know how to look at it and go, okay, well, it's got some hills. It's got this much trimming. It's got these beds over here. It's got this. It's got that. When I'm looking at jobs now, I go through all that. I even go through the parking and go, okay, well, this neighborhood is this thing. It's going to be a pain to park here. That's probably going to, in my experience, if you guys follow me on Instagram, I've got a lot of these neighborhoods that are a pain to park in. So I take that into account. I look at it and go, okay, well, in my experience, in some of these similar neighborhoods, I may go 1, 2, 3 weeks with no issue parking, but then inevitably I'm going to have that 4th week where I get here and there's no parking. And then I'm going to leave and go to the next house and mow that one. And then I'm going to spend 5 minutes and backtrack driving back over to this one. And there may not be parking again. And then I'm going to go to the next house, which is farther away. And then I'm going to backtrack and come back 10 minutes to check on that house. And then if there is parking, great. If there isn't, I'm going to be driving 10 minutes again to get to the 4th house. And I may backtrack another time or come back the next day, depending on the schedule. And I'll put that into account when I'm bidding that house in a neighborhood like that, you know what? It's not always going to be smooth for me to park my truck and trailer in this tight subdivision that inevitably there's going to be, maybe 25% of the time, say once a month, where it's going to be a real pain. And I take that into account. And when a customer says to me, well, the last guy, he was doing it for this much. Well, that's great for the last guy. And when I was first starting out, I'd be like, well, okay, well, I'll match that, right? Sort of thing. And not asking any other questions. Now I don't even bother. Now I just tell them, that's great. Where's the last guy? How come he's not doing it anymore? And then you start getting into the, well, he didn't show up anymore. Oh, well, he probably figured out that he wasn't getting paid enough. He probably finally came around to the fact that he can't pay his bills because of what he's charging. Or you find out, oh, it was the neighbor kid down the street using their father's lawnmower. And they weren't trimming the edges. And they have no overhead. And they're, say, 14 years old. And sporadically doing it. And charging $25. Well, there's a reason why. Right? There's no overhead. They're doing, I ran into this with, I've talked about those companies that have been coming around my neighborhood, dropping off a bunch of students, pushing aerators around. And they've kind of dissolved the cost of aerating around here. And luckily, my lawn care customers are loyal. And I still do all the aerating for my own customers. And I still do it all at the prices I've always charged. But a lot of these homeowners now expect that the aerating is at this lower price. So for me, on average, an aeration is $75. And these guys were going around and charging as little as $30. And so if a new client calls and they're like, asking for an aeration and it's like $75. And they're like, well, why are you charging that much? And it's like, well, for one, I'm not pushing an aerator up the street. I'm driving my truck. So there's expenses with the business. I've got full insurance, full licenses. I'm also, I would say, doing a better job at it because of the experience. And not being in such a rush doing it, like I've seen with these guys, but that's here nor there. And also, these guys pushing these aerators around, all they had was the aerator. So they didn't have a blower with them. They didn't even have a broom with them. So the cores were tracked on the sidewalks, across the driveway, all that sort of stuff when they're, moving the equipment from one side of the yard to the other or going to the backyard or all that stuff. And they weren't cleaning it up. So it wasn't the same level of service. And if you weren't happy with something, there was no way to contact this person just going door to door pushing an aerator. And you also couldn't have any added or take advantage of any add-on services like overseeding or fertilizer or lime at the time, where I carry all that stuff. So I came to the realization at first when I was, kind of getting a bit upset, thinking these guys are just, they're taking over the neighborhood essentially. They're, wrecking, everything, that you're doing and all that sort of stuff. And then I came to realization that, they're not. These guys are just going after each other, and more of these companies would start popping up, and they're all trying to outdo each other and work cheaper and work earlier in the year and all that. And I started to see the strain of complaints coming from customers and seeing that it's not the same service. Trust in yourself and what you provide. You know what you provide. So when customers try to nickel and dime you, and you know the level of quality that you are going to provide, and you now have the ammunition of knowing what your true costs are and knowing the level of service you're going to provide to stand firm and say, I'm sorry, this is the costs and this is why. And in most cases, you'll find that there was a problem with that last guy. In fact, every single time I have picked up a client who has tried that, they only expect you to say, oh, okay, like I'll match the price or, whatever. They don't expect you to start asking questions of why. Why isn't he still doing it? What didn't you like? And they inevitably start answering these questions. And you get these things where, he never showed up. He wasn't reliable. He said he was coming, then he didn't. He, made a mess on the patio. He wrecked this. He damaged that. There's this list of things that they'll go through, and instantly it's not the same service. And you have to be willing to walk away. You will come to those clients that are just, nope, this is, I don't want to pay that much. That's too expensive, blah, blah, blah. And you can sit there and do the job for less. And in some cases, if you're really desperate, you might find yourself doing a job where now not only are you not breaking even, but it's costing you money to do that job based on that hourly rate of what it costs to operate your business. And you may do it in the beginning to just put yourself out there. I told the story on the episode, I think with Keith Kalfas, how when I first started, I would go and mow some lawns for free. But it was strategic. It was so that I could get the truck and trailer out in these neighborhoods that I wanted to work in and be seen by other neighbors, because those other neighbors didn't know that you were working for free. They just saw you mowing the lawn. And you could sit there and lay a stripe and edge a lawn and make it look fantastic. And even, I would say, this is something I didn't do, but something I would if I had to do it all over again, would say, I'll mow your lawn for free, but I'm going to put a sign in the lawn on the condition of that I can put, my company sign on the lawn for 1 week or 1 month or whatever. And that's how I would go about that now. I would add that part in. I was just telling people, if you need work in the future, give me a call, or here's my cards, pass them around to people that you think. I would add then now take it to the next level and say, hey, I'm going to put a small yard sign in your yard for 1 month. I'll come back at the end of the month to pick it up. And for that, I'll mow your lawn for free. And get my start in those neighborhoods that way. That way neighbors are seeing you, and I would try to do it. Now I know this is going off track a little bit, but I would try to do that particularly on a Saturday when people are home and they're out in their own gardens and, going to the store and coming back and, in and out of the neighborhood and seeing your truck and trailer working. That's when I would plan those. But like I said, that's a bit off topic there, but I just wanted to throw that in. So I hope that helps you guys out in understanding that importance of knowing your overhead. This can also be an essential planning tool if you're thinking about going into lawn care and you still have a part-time job. Maybe a job you don't like and it's driving you crazy and you keep thinking about the glamorous life of lawn care and living the dream. But knowing those true costs and figuring that out beforehand can really help you. I get the question. In fact, I got the question about an hour ago before recording this podcast of, somebody saying that, how do they know when to leave their job? That they're tired of their job and all that stuff, and they really want to do the lawn care and all that sort of stuff. Well, knowing your numbers is a good way to know when to leave your job and knowing if you're ready for it. When you know that true cost of your household income, what it costs, all those household expenses, and what your business actually costs you to operate. So I think that's it for this week. So here's to wishing you guys all overwhelming success and freedom in your lawn care business. Bye for now.